Hello everyone. In today's installment of my journey to become a game dev, I'll be recounting my experience of going from making a clone of Flappy Bird to making my very own first-person shooter. After my last video, I had a hard time coming up with a project idea that was simple and realistic. I also wanted to avoid cloning another game like Flappy Bird so that I'd have a bit more freedom. After being inspired by Sebastian Legge, I decided to create a gravity simulator. Just a few days later, I had completed the gravity simulator. I couldn't think of anything else I wanted to do with the simulator, so I just played around a bit. Now that I was finished making the gravity simulator, it was back to the drawing board. After some brainstorming, I decided I wanted to make a first-person shooter prototype. Partly to prove to myself that I could do it, and partly because I found the idea of making a first-person shooter motivating. Especially since I'm a fan of games like Call of Duty, Fallout, and Destiny. Once I had figured out what I wanted to make, I just had to start. Which actually ended up being more difficult than I anticipated because other aspects of my life kept postponing my progress. After some rescheduling and limiting the time I spent playing League, I began to make progress on my first-person shooter prototype. I started by implementing the basics, such as a temporary player body, a gun, and camera movement. For the gun, I downloaded an asset from the Unity store to save myself some time in order to focus on the foundation of the prototype. While I was at it, I went ahead and got a free modular kit from the Unity asset store as well. If you're interested in any of these assets that I'm using in this video, I'll provide a link to each of them in the description. Now that I had a test area and a gun, it was time to give the player a body. Then I brought my player to life by adding some basic movement and camera control. Next, I added the ability to jump and gave myself some shooting targets, even though I couldn't shoot yet. As you can see, there are still a few bugs left, but nothing that can't be hammered out later. Looking back though, all the issues I was having were due to what should have been a few quick, easy fixes. The original test area was starting to get cramped with all the movement I was able to do now, so I created my own test area using ProBuilder. After making the new test area, I started moving over all the scripts I had created previously so that the player could move again in the new environment. For some reason though, whenever I brought the scripts over, the player movement got all wonky, so I had to take a moment to fix that. Once I was done fixing what I had broken, I added a reticle so that the player could tell where they were aiming. Now that the player is able to aim, the next logical step would be to give the player the ability to shoot. I was a bit surprised at how simple it was to add the ability to shoot in Unity, and with the time I had saved, what better way to spend my newfound free time than making muzzle flash and bullet impact particle effects. Somehow I even managed to break the particle system and made a galactical blob of some sort. Having finished the primitive player movement and given the player a working weapon, it was time to work on some of the aesthetics of my test environment. Or maybe that was just an excuse to take a break from programming. I tried animating the shooting target guy so it'd fall backwards when shot and pop up when it spawned, but I couldn't get it to work for some reason. So instead, I made a wall target. I then made a ghastly attempt at mood lighting by changing the skybox into something gloomier. Then I added a giant floating tree and I made it glow because why not? Having taken a sufficient break from programming, I created an enemy that patrols an area and follows the player if the player gets close enough. I have a lot of ideas on how I want to improve the enemy AI, and I will definitely be returning to it later on. Making the enemy AI was draining, so I switched to decorating the test area some more. I had the idea that this test area could be made into a training area of sorts to get used to the mechanics of the game. With this idea in mind, I separated the starting area from the area where the enemies will be and gave the player a base area. Taking some inspiration from Dark Souls, I wanted to create a campfire where I planned to give the player the ability to manage their stats. I tried my hand at making a custom material for the wood for the campfire using Blender, only to find out that the importing process from Blender to Unity doesn't work exactly in the way that I expected, and the material that I had made was so detailed my computer was having a hard time keeping up, so I set the material aside for later. Wait. What? How did this happen? In the process of trying to add the material to the game, I turned the floating tree pink. How? I don't know, but I fixed it. After settling on some basic materials, I worked on the flame particles for the campfire, and I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. All that was left was to give the player the ability to interact with the campfire. For now, I settled with just turning the flames off and on. I'm currently working on setting up a user interface for interacting with objects so the player can get an indicator when they can interact with something. But I've run into a really troublesome issue with TextMesh Pro, so that will have to wait until next time. Thank you for having watched this far. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more, please like, subscribe, and ring that bell notification so you're notified when I upload my next video, so that you can see where my journey takes me to next. Also, if you'd like to watch the first installment of this series, click the link on the screen. See you next time.